What's going on, everybody? My name is Ben and welcome back to another episode of Ben Builds. This is the Ventura episode number 11, and today we are going to continue with some painting. Now, last episode we went ahead and overcoated the aircraft with that lovely sea blue. We've got the medium blue on the sides of the fuselage, we've got the white on the nose cone and the undersides of the aircraft. We are looking pretty cool. Done a little bit of post shade on the darker sea blue, accenting a couple of panel lines here and there, but I think honestly it looks pretty decent. But the unfortunate side to this is that the white on the bottom of the aircraft just doesn't have as much of an impact as I would like. So I want to go ahead and trace some panel lines, do a little post shade with some Tamiya Smoke. I think that's going to be a really good color to use because it's not too stark and it's just going to add just a tiny bit of shadow here on the panel lines. So that's kind of what I'm going to focus on first for today. And honestly, I think that's going to go over pretty well because, again, I don't want anything too stark. The colors that I had before, that red-brown, did actually work pretty well. But again, I want a little bit more contrast there on the panel lines. So let's go ahead and pull off the wings, and then we'll just be able to use each of these as sub-assemblies and airbrush separately. I do think that's going to be better than trying to swing a giant model around my desk. So we're going to load up some of our Tamiya Smoke into our Grex TG3, and we are just going to attempt to post-shade all of the underside of the aircraft. This shouldn't be too bad, honestly. As long as I run a nice, easy, smooth pace, it shouldn't be hard at all. Even if I do overspray a tiny bit, I can come back a little bit later and overcoat with a little bit of very thinned white. Let's go ahead and try it out, see what we can accomplish. So we have all of that nicely painted. We are looking beautiful on that. So we're going to flip our attention over to the octopus decal. Now this is a scan of the actual decal image, and we are going to go ahead and attempt to create our own mask for this octopus decal. Now it's very intricate, and there are actually 4 pieces total for the decal. There's a right and a left, and then a top right and a top left for the turret ring. I'm going to go ahead and use frisket film, and we are going to attempt to make a giant mask so we can go ahead and airbrush this instead of trying to fill it with these multi-part decals. Plus, I've heard the decals are kind of hard to work with anyway because they're larger and they don't really like to conform to the rounded surface. So I think painting will be the perfect solution to that issue. So scissors in hand, we're going to go ahead and just cut out each of the sides of the decal, so the right and left side. Once we kind of get these all ironed out, then we're going to try to piece them together to create one template. And then we'll take that template and we'll trace it out onto some frisket film, cut that out, and create a 2-part mask. I think this is probably the best way to go with that. Now you'll see that along each of these tentacles there are small little suction cups that are actually molded into the decal. We aren't really going to worry about those in this stage. We're going to have to probably come back and hand paint those or use some form of trickery to go ahead and just get those onto the aircraft. I'm not sure how I'm going to do that quite yet, but we're going to give it a try because honestly, I mean, this is a lot of fun and it's an adventure. Now, scissors are actually too large for certain areas here on this image. So we're going to go ahead and use an X-Acto knife. I can just go ahead and just trace this outer edge with that blade, and it cuts through it like butter. No problem. Now let's talk a little bit about color though. Once I get all this cut out and I create my actual stencil and I create my mask from that, we're going to need to go ahead and figure out the color for the tentacles. I've heard a couple different stories. I've heard of a dark green, a light green. I've heard of a pre-war super light green. Probably they would have used whatever paint they had in the field, and I'm assuming they would have had some form of olive green. So we're going to go with a couple of different shades of green. We're going to go with some light green, we're going to go with some olive green, and maybe some slightly off-shaded olive green with a little bit more kind of olive in it. So we're just going to play around with the colors. One of those is probably going to be right, and I have a feeling that that light green, that's going to be the one that we're going to overcoat everything with, and that should be the one that we stick with. All right, so we have both sides of the octopus tentacles cut out. Now we're going to have to go ahead and attach those together, so I'm figuring I'm just going to tape them together. I've got some blue tape here that we can use. Let's go ahead and shorten it just a little bit so we don't have a lot of overhang. And we need to position these so that the inner circles are lined up, and the outer circles we can always trim that, but get those as close to lined up as possible. And I think we are good right there. Let's go ahead and stick that blue tape right there. Awesome. Okay, so now we have more or less one completed piece. Let's flip it over, give it a little bit more stability by putting one more piece of tape. I'm going to go with some Tamiya 6mm. That should be fine. Plus, it's not too thick, and I should be able to just trim it off if I end up going over. So there we go. Now we're going to have to go ahead and stick it down to the frisket film, and for that, I'm not sure how to do that. Again, this is my first time ever using this type of technique, so this is all a learning curve for me, for sure. Let's go ahead and trim off just a slight bit of difference right here. There we go. And here is our completed template. And this is what it looks like. This is what we're going to have to go ahead and use. We're going to put this on our frisket film, and then we'll go ahead and just trace this out, and we'll create another image just like this one. Now, I've never used frisket film before, but I've heard that it's really, really nice stuff to work with, and it's very thin, it's very flexible, and it can go around contoured shapes. And because our fuselage is rounded and curved, I thought this would probably be the best way to do it. Now, I thought I might be able to trace it with a basic pencil. The lead of the pencil does not actually mark this frisket film. It's too glossy. So a Sharpie might work, something like that. But I've opted to go ahead and forget that whole mess. And instead, we're going to go ahead and use an X-Acto blade, a very sharp X-Acto blade. I shouldn't have to press too hard. And I should be able just to use the edge of this image and just trace it out with the blade and reproduce the image into the frisket paper. All right, we have our mask. As you can see, it actually turned out pretty decently, but we do have to go ahead and fit it here around the collar for the turret. It needs to be a little wider, which we took care of with our X-Acto knife, and we're ready to go ahead and start sticking this down to the fuselage. Now, with frisket film, it looks like it's pretty thin stuff, so we're just going to go ahead and work tentacle by tentacle. We're going to go ahead and separate it from the backing, clip that backing off, stick the tentacle down, and move on to the next one. I think that's going to allow us to go step by step at a nice easy pace to get this whole thing stuck down. All right, we are going to go ahead and stick down the last couple of tentacles right here. And I think we are looking pretty sharp, guys. There we go. Just to let this curve across the top of the fuselage. And let's go ahead and just make sure the other side is nice and stuck down. I had to position this and make sure that it lined up more or less where the instructions show it lining up. And I think we're looking all right. Now that that is down, this is where it starts to get a little complicated. And trust me, this is going to make far more sense once I complete the process and you see what I'm going for. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to take the outer part of our template that we made, all the frisket film left over, and we're going to line it back up and we're going to stick it down around the template that we cut out. Now this seems like a roundabout way to do it, but I think this is going to work out. Trust me, I think it'll make much more sense once I start putting down some paint. Once this is all lined up, let's go ahead and grab our tweezers and we are going to remove the center part of that octopus. We're going to pull out basically what we cut out of the frisket film. We're going to pull that off and leave the outer edge right where it's supposed to be. Now, what we basically did is we created the inner octopus. That is for placement to make sure that we have that circle right where we needed it to be. And then we have the outer part of the frisket film. That's going to be our mask. A little complicated, yes, I know, a little kind of hard to explain, but I think it'll work out. Should be able to catch on once I go ahead and get this all painted up. Now, one of the big issue I think we might have with this is the fact that this is low tack and it's on a curved surface. So I'm kind of worried about paint seeping underneath the mask and getting where we don't want it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that if there's any areas that are kind of puckering up a little bit, I'm going to take some Tamiya tape and I'm going to take some blue tape. And we're just going to make sure that that is stuck down and reinforce it with our Tamiya tape. I think that's a really good step to do because I do not want to have to come back and correct a bunch of overspray or a bunch of masks that just don't work. So I think that's going to be perfect. So like I said, we're going to start with a dark green, then we're going to shift over to a light green, kind of fade everything together, and well, fingers crossed, this works out. All right, everybody, we have everything painted and I believe we can go ahead and remove the masks. Oh boy, this is the moment of truth. If this doesn't work and we have a paint job that's just absolutely ruined, I'm going to be mad about it. I'm really hoping that this works out. I hope that nothing leaked and that the frisket film was able to hold those lines. All right, everybody, one more little piece here. And as you can already tell, guys, it worked. I can't believe it. It actually worked. Frisket film, it's my new best friend for sure. This actually turned out far better than I anticipated. And we didn't have any leaks. We didn't have any seepage underneath the mask edge. We really honestly lucked out big time with this stuff. So let me go ahead and give you a close up here and you can see what I'm talking about. Low PSI, nice easy strokes. I didn't just hold in one place too long. You can see the tentacles turned out beautifully, far better than I anticipated. And what a relief. I mean, I tell you, what a relief. So that's about it for today, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. As you can see, the octopus marking, I think, turned out beautifully. I'm very pleased with its overall shape, its overall size, and just how well the frisket film worked. Episode 12 will be the continuation on this actual octopus marking. We're going to go ahead and try to paint those suction cups. We're going to go ahead and shade it out with a little bit of Tamiya Smoke. So until next episode, guys, go out, get yourself some bench time, have some fun, build something cool, and we'll see you back here on the next episode of Ben Builds. We'll see you soon.